Is Turkey alone in its fight against terror at home? After a PKK splinter group claims twin bombings in Istanbul, we ask if Western powers have helped or hurt the nation's fight against the separatist group. I'm Imran Garda, and this is the Newsmakers. Terror has once again hit the streets of Turkey in what has been its deadliest year for civilians in recent history. On Saturday night, 2 bombs tore through central Istanbul, killing dozens of people. An offshoot of the outlawed PKK called the TAK has claimed responsibility. It sparked a national conversation on whether this should be a turning point in Turkey's fight against the armed separatist group and a change in Western foreign policy. Ankara accuses the US and EU of supporting and harboring those linked to the group. But these Western powers say they condemn the PKK and consider it a terrorist organization. Today's newsmaker is the TAK, as we ask if its latest attack on Istanbul will bring Turkey and its Western allies closer together or further apart in their fight against terrorism.
They shook a country already grieving. Twin bombings outside a football stadium in central Istanbul. Exploding less than a minute apart. In an instant, killing dozens of people, most of them police. And upending the lives of the countless friends and family left behind.
The urban wing of the PKK terror group known as the TAK has claimed responsibility for the attacks. The bombings took place here at this stadium on the European side of Istanbul. They happened less than 2 hours after a football match ended between the country's 2 top teams and have left people here frightened and upset by a string of terror attacks over the past year.
Bu terör belasıyla bununla mücadelede bir defa milletimin, halkımın sonuna kadar bu mücadeleyi sürdüreceğimizden hiç şüphesi olmasın.
Turkey has been attacked from multiple terror groups this year. From armed separatist groups to Daesh militants. In an online post on its website, the TAK says it carried out Saturday's attack. The group has been responsible for at least 6 others across the country this year. They were behind a car bombing in Istanbul that killed 12 in June, a bombing in the capital Ankara in March that claimed 37 lives, and another bombing in February that targeted a military convoy in Ankara that killed 29 people. The TAK says the latest bombings in Istanbul are in revenge for the ongoing violence taking place in southeastern Turkey, and for the imprisonment of PKK leader Abdullah Öcalan. Many world leaders have condemned the attacks and expressed solidarity with Turkey's battle against terrorism. But Turkey has also expressed frustration with what it sees as a lack of support for its fight against the PKK, especially from the United States and Europe. It's accused the US of arming militants linked to the PKK in Syria. An editorial in the pro-government newspaper Daily Sabah published on Sunday reads, "In the name of fighting Daesh without placing American lives at risk, US President Barack Obama outsourced the counterterrorism effort to the YPG, the PKK's Syrian branch. Today, the best policy would be to spare us your empty words." It also accuses the EU of allowing the PKK to operate freely. So is Turkey alone in its fight against a terror group that seems to not pose a threat to the West? Or are Western powers sincere in their expressions of solidarity with Turkey? Christine Pirovolakis, The Newsmakers.
Well, to discuss this, I'm joined now by Saadet Oruç, a senior advisor to the Turkish president, and Dr. Özden Zeynep Oktav, professor in international relations, who specializes in Middle Eastern affairs at Istanbul Medeniyet University. Also from Washington, D.C., retired Brigadier General Mark Kimmitt. He's the former assistant U.S. Secretary of State for Political Military Affairs. Thanks, all of you, for joining us. Let me start with you, Zeynep Oktav. This group, the TAK, an offshoot of the PKK, Why did they do this, and why did they do this now?
The timing is very important, as you mentioned, because Turkey is proceeding to the inwards of the northern Syria to Elbap, and just spoiling the plans of YPG and the Syrian Democratic Council, YPG-dominated coalition, you know, and because Turkey is against the unification of the Kurdish cantons in the northern Syria, and Elbap is very strategically important place. And Turkey is simultaneously fighting against PKK in southeastern Anatolia. This is not relevant with Kurdish-Turkish confrontation or separatist feelings. This is completely an outside external attack on Turkey's borders. Turkey tries to keep the stability and the territorial integrity and keep the stability at its borders right now. And therefore, this is not relevant with any other separatist feelings or movements. This is completely external attack on Turkey's economy, Turkey's borders, Turkey's security, and we are all united against such attacks on Turkey. I mean, regardless of the ideological differences, ethnic differences, or the sectarian differences, Turks are very much united against such attacks on Turkey.
And that's the feeling I've been getting from sampling the responses of the past 48 hours. Saadet Oruç, they said, the TAK on their website, they said they're doing it as a reprisal for the operations in the southeast by the Turkish military and the imprisonment of Abdullah Öcalan. If they were watching this and listening to this, your response to that would be what?
Of course, I'll not get into a position to answer the statement of a terrorist organization which has just caused the death of too many people in Turkey. But I think the question, try to find an answer to the question, why does a terrorist organization conduct a terrorist attack against Turkey? I think it's the wrong question, because there is not any aim of these such organizations which can be linked with any ideology or something like this. They had become a tool for some time. They became a tool for some international powers which try to make external operations in Turkey. Since 2013 Gezi events, we see an escalation of operations against Turkey, and these groups had become very proper tools of these international powers.
That's an interesting claim.
No, I will just add something.
I just want to add to that so you can expand on it. You wrote a column yesterday. Terror as a card of Western diplomacy towards Turkey, your Daily Sabah column.
Yes.
What did you mean by that?
15th of July, the failed coup attempt has been a turning point. When we would like to make comments, make analysis on Turkey and international relations or terrorism, we should put a stick on 15th of July. Because it was the biggest terror attack against Turkey, which can be named as an attempt for even invasion, not only a coup d'etat, but an invasion. And we see that when we consider the statements made by Turkey's European allies or the United States, we see that there is a clear shelter which has been provided by these Western allies of Turkey for these terrorist organizations, namely FETÖ, Fethullah Network, PKK, DHKPC, the leftist terrorist group. We see a clear shelter provided by Western countries to these organizations.
Let me ask General Kimmet then, as we focus on the United States for a second. General Kimmet, has the United States got it wrong by trying to separate out the PKK and the YPG and saying, well, they're two separate organizations, we'll support the YPG in Syria, enemy of my enemy is my friend, but the PKK is a terror organization. Is US policy wrong?
Yeah, I actually believe this administration may be trying to cut the line a little bit thin, despite the fact that they seem to have found a common ally in the fight against Daesh in northern Syria. I think it would be helpful for this administration to recognize that there's a clear link between the YPG inside of northern Syria and the PKK. Either though both those groups tried to deny it, I think it's a pretty inseparable fact that they have the same long-term aspirations, and in the case of the YPG, where they're looking for territorial gains inside northern Syria, with the long-term view of making that part of Syrian Kurdistan, that is very similar to what the PKK is seeking for in northern Iraq.
I want to play a little bit of tape here from January, if I understand correctly. This is from the YPG in Syria. There seems to be a foreign fighter, clearly a non-local accent, somebody with their face covered up. And this is a video issued by the YPG. Let's have a little listen to this and talk after that.
We call on all revolutionaries worldwide, join the resistance. This is not the time to sit at home and ponder what might be. We are building the future now. And our call is rebellion. Rise against the machine. Attack the institutions of the Turkish state all over the world. Come to Kurdistan and join the forces of YPG, YPS, and the guerrilla. Solidarity forever. Sawrat al-Nasr.
So, Zainab, would the TAK be responding almost to the spirit of something like that, rather than maybe being actively coordinated by the YPG from across the border, or maybe a PKK hub here? Do they merely have to listen to something like that and then go off and do their own thing, almost like a franchise?
Franchise, yes. TAK is a newly founded branch of PKK, as you know, and they they organized such brutal and immoral attacks on civilians before the Saturday attack, you know, and they are very much protested by many segments of Turkish society, including some leftists as well. But on Saturday, maybe you understood that they were aware, they just avoided attacking on the civilians. They just wanted to kill the policemen, and the number of the civilians killed by this brutal attack TAK are few, I mean quite few, and because they try not to attract the protests from the leftist segment of Turkish society.
Right. Saadet, let's sort of return to what General Kimmit said, and let me ask you, are you encouraged by what he said, where that this administration's cutting it a bit too fine, and that if they were getting the proper advice, maybe they would want to consider the PKK and the YPG as the same?
First of all, I'd like to say something about, you know, the distinction between civilians and policemen after a terrorist attack is a very dangerous thing. You know, just when we talk about the TAK terrorist attacks, they didn't want to kill civilians, etc. Will they ask for the identity card? So it's something very dangerous. I just wanted to add, okay. And the second thing, I think the new administration, Trump administration, concerning the policy towards YPG, I hope that they will change the position of Obama administration. But it seems that the plans for changing the borders, geographical change, mostly depends on the consortium of the Western powers with some terrorist organizations. Here, how did the PYD gain legitimacy in the region? Because they said that they are combating against Daesh, which was not in fact a biggest threat. Just it was mentioned, it was declared. Because I think that Daesh is also an instrument prepared by the West. The ground for the formation of Daesh has been prepared by the Western powers, I think.
But it's their policies. They're not actively...
It's important. It's not a detail. It's important to press here.
But I guess you can say that their policies led to the formation of it down the line. You're not suggesting in any way that they run Daesh, do you?
No.
Right.
They prepared the ground for this, and they used Daesh as a pretext for realization of their geographical plans in the region. For example, how did the PYD, which was a clear branch of the PKK, has gained legitimacy and even lead to a position that a German court may discuss the exclusion of the PKK from a terrorist group.
Okay.
So they used Daesh as a proper instrument for realizing their long-term territorial changes.
And you're
in the
saying
region.
that's who? The Germans, the United States?
No, I'm not naming any Western state, but I don't want to name. But
Sure.
it became a very useful tool. How did Al-Qaeda or Taliban were used in Afghanistan before? How was it supported by some United States?
Okay. If you'll allow me, let me bring in General Kemet. General Kemet, so Saadet Oruç claims that Daesh is being instrumentalized by the United States and others. What do you think?
I tend to disagree strongly on that, to suggest that somehow the international community in general and the United States in particular is, as you would say, instrumentalized. I would say giving the slightest bit of support or safe haven to Al-Qaeda and to Daesh for their some sort of large Western conspiracy to redraw the borders. I think there is no basis in fact at that assertion, and I don't think there's been any political statement made by a credible voice inside of the United States that would even suggest that. So I can, even though I'm not a member of this administration, I do consider myself a friend of Turkey. If I may finish the point, I consider myself a very close friend of Turkey. I was in a car heading to Taksim Square on Saturday night. I understand the cost of this type of terrorism in my country and in the country of my friend of Turkey. I've served in NATO for many, many years, and at no time has anybody ever considered the use of any terrorist organization in general, or the PKK in particular, to advance some sort of international plot to redress the borders, redraw the borders, or do anything in the slightest that would come to the harm of Turkey. It is a clear, close NATO ally, and I don't want to see that stopped, and the United States doesn't want to see that stopped.
May I say something here? It's not only Daesh or any other organization being instrumentalized, but it's also Fethullah terror organization, which is based in the United States, and the leader of this organization has been provided shelter and protection in the United States. So how will you explain this position? And when we come to the Daesh being instrumentalized by the Western powers, if the Western world really wanted to defeat Daesh, it would have been defeated until now. But the PYD and the PKK, to some extent, being legitimized in the eyes of the West, it's because of Daesh.
Okay, there's a couple of questions there. General Kemet?
Yeah. First of all, Gulen is not finding safe haven and sanctuary inside the United States. He is currently undergoing legal proceedings which could lead to his being expelled from the United States if there's any distinct linkage being shown between him and any terrorist act. The United States has asked time after time for evidence to support that assertion, and it's now going through the legal system.
May I add something?
No, I'd like to. I gave you a chance to talk, and I'd like to finish what I have to say.
Excuse me. Okay, please.
The second issue about somehow that the United States is supporting Daesh or any other terrorist organization, or could destroy Daesh with a wave of a hand, I would say it's been as difficult for the United States to attack and defeat Daesh as it has been for the Turkish government to attack and defeat the PKK. We are taking action as part of a broad international community right now. We have American troops on the ground in both in Iraq and Syria to do that. And I think we've seen over the past few months substantial progress to destroy Daesh. We have American soldiers on the front line with bayonets on their rifles that are attacking to defeat Daesh now. And I'd like Turkey to recognize the sacrifices being made by the United States in defeating this common enemy of both our countries.
Saadet?
Okay, when we come to FETÖ, first of all, for many times, Turkish government has asked the extradition of this coup leader, which has been defined. Yep. You know, even the head of the Turkish military, Hulusi Akar, who had been kidnapped on the night of the coup attempt, has declared that he was proposed to speak with the leader of the cult.
Sure, but Ms.
No,
Oruç,
no,
I mean,
let
we're
me
going to go
finish,
down
let
this
me
rabbit
finish.
hole of
You know,
the
there are
extradition of
clear-
Feto.
there
That's
are-
an entirely different show.
But you know, he said
it's part of the
it's
legal
okay.
process, isn't it, with the
no,
Department
but
of Justice?
he said that,
Yes.
you know, if you let me to speak, it's okay. But if you will just
No, I don't want us to go down this rabbit hole of Feto
no, he
and
said
his
something
extradition.
about,
Sure, please.
but it was the
Sure, go for it.
statement by the chief of Turkish General
Right.
Staff, who said that he was asked to speak with Fethullah Gülen on the night of the coup. So it's a real proof that he has his finger behind this coup attempt. So I think that everything is very clear. So there is no response from the United States until yet, and it's an evidence.
Okay, but how about I invite you back on the show and we discuss Gülen's
Okay.
extradition.
Okay.
And we do the entire program about that.
Okay, it's okay.
You happy with that?
Yes,
I'd be
sir.
happy with that.
Okay.
Zainab Oktav, how would you rank the threat? So we have Daesh, we have the PKK, YPG, TAK, and all those affiliates, and Gülen in this country right now. Multiple threats. How would you categorize those threats and rank them?
The Gülen one is the most threatening for Turkey, in my opinion, because they are like a cancer within a body. I mean, in our institutions, they just still, in my opinion, existing, and the government, our state, is spending much effort to clean all this cancer within the institutions of Turkey, unfortunately.
And PKK versus Daesh?
PKK and Daesh, I don't see any difference between them, but I just would like to ask a question to Mr. Kımet, if it's possible.
Sure. Go ahead.
Sure.
Can I ask?
Go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Kımet, I'm an ordinary university teacher, professor, and I'm teaching American foreign policy at my university. And I have many students. While explaining American foreign policy during the Cold War period, I'm just explaining how Turkey and United States were allying with each other and very in good term while fighting against the terrorism or other unfair policies of the other countries. But when it comes to 2000s, Turkey and United States are really very much hostile with each other. Not hostile maybe, but United States is very biased against Turkey. Turkey is getting more undemocratic, and the dictatorship is existing in Turkey. And I cannot explain why for United States YPG and PKK is different from each other. Can you please explain why they are different from each other, and so that I can explain to my students? And believe me, United States image is getting worse and worse and worse in the eyes of my students.
Very strongly put, and we'll let this be the final word. General Kımet, have a go.
Well, first of all, to a great extent, I agree with my colleague from the university. I believe this administration has been very inconsistent with their policies, and I'm certainly hoping the next administration will be more consistent. You talk about General Ahar. He and I served together as fellow colonels inside Bosnia. I have a great respect for him, and I have a great admiration for him. But I would tell you, I have been concerned that since the Cold War to now, that the United States has not been as clear and consistent with their policies to our friend Turkey. Turkey remains a vital member of NATO and a close friend of the United States. I think the way we get back to that is first by pushing the legal proceedings forward to make a determination on Fethullah Gülen. If he should be extradited, if our laws say he must be extradited, he should be extradited. And the next administration has said that. But the overall issue is we need to go back, as you say, to that long-term relationship between our two countries where we work together, and not in opposition, but together, because we have far more in common than we have in opposition. And I would like to see this next administration reduce that little bit of opposition so we can get back on the path that has served our two countries so well since the end of the Second World War.
Okay, and it was good to hear that end on a fruitful note. Saadet Oruç, Zeynep Oktav, and General Mark Kımet. Thanks all of you for joining us. I apologize, we have run out of time. We could go on and on for forever and ever, but thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Let's go off script for a moment. As news of the attack broke, both analysts and casual commentators, usually from outside Turkey, came to the fore. Some initially presuming it was Daesh because of blowback for Turkey's Syria policy. Others immediately pointed to arrests of HDP members as the catalyst for the attack and predicted future crackdowns. But living here through the attacks and seeing how the Turkish people respond to such analysis, they're deeply upset. There's a question of empathy. Now, I know some of you are going to disagree with me, and that's okay, but hear me out for a second. The TAK targets may have been police, but these were not cops enforcing a military occupation or a checkpoint under curfew. And even then, would they be fair game? They were there to protect fans, enjoying the small pleasure of football during what has been a tough 18 months for all of Turkey. Yes, there's an ongoing insurgency within Turkey that has affected millions of people. And yes, there needs to be a political resolution. But in the same way that providing analysis of France's involvement in Syria while innocents were still besieged and being butchered in the Bataclan might have seemed in poor taste, or highlighting Belgium's colonial past while people in Brussels were being massacred seemed just gross and unfair, the same happened here. Timing is important. Sympathy is important. Let's provide insight. Let's debate and discuss the big picture and ask who, why, what comes next, as we've just done on this very show. But ask yourself this: when news of an atrocity just breaks, do you actually care? Or are you exploiting it in your rush to score political points? Let us know what you think. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.